Having recently dealt with what can only be described as an experience with forts, I've been thinking, does anyone actually like forts? No, I mean, I'm sure if you make a build playing Georgia or Persia or something, and you make some unsiegeable fortifications, watching a public enemy #1 like the Ottomans miserably struggle against them, well, that can be fun, right? But in conventional play, do you ever go, today I want to unite Japan, I can't wait to get some sieges done. Or, I want to restore the Roman Empire, I can't wait to siege all the forts in Italy, right? I actually believe that siegeability is overvalued, and to be clear, it is a strong modifier, but it is overvalued nevertheless because sieges are so miserable. Alas, one has to say, forts are a necessary evil, and EU4 would be a worse game if it didn't have any forts. After all, it is true to say that forts are necessary for EU4. Or is it? Lemon Cake here, what if, instead of fort, we have no fort? Okay, no fort. You get your forts back if you behave. What we're going to be doing today is making every fort building that gives fort levels no longer give fort levels. I'm also going to make the capital fort no longer give a fort level, and I'll be removing the +1 fort level thing from the province modifier in Korea, and there's probably some other forts I'm missing. Top of my head, I think Ming gets a mission, but you know what? Close enough. And I'm going to be doing an AI only to see what no fort EU4 will look like. So if that's something that interests you, well, stick around and let's find out together. But before we get into the video proper, just a quick place to say that a like would be appreciated, and a subscription would be amazing, but enough self-shitting. Time to remove the forts. Alright, so here we are in EU4. If you want to run the mod yourself, I will be also uploading it to the Steam Workshop. It's not the greatest over-the-top removal of forts ever, and it's not going to be the most compatible because I did have to change the building file itself, so if you have any other mod that changes buildings in some way, like extended timeline, it's not going to work. But for the most part, if you just want to see no forts and you don't want to remove it manually, again, link will be available in the description for you to go and grab the mod yourself on Steam. But alright, let's get into the lobby. I say lobby, we're in single player, but yeah, the world looks normal here, and the one thing I want to also make clear is that I didn't actually remove forts as in the building forts, because it's going to mess up some missions, they're going to expect forts to exist, and so on and so forth. So technically, if you want to pay maintenance on a building that does nothing, you can just go and do that, so countries like the Ottomans and even Byzantium are going to be spending money paying for forts that don't exist. So yeah, let's pick a random country, let's go with England, I famously never play them. Let's pop into the game and take a look at what this means in practice. Alright, so here we are, and indeed the forts are still on the map, they're actually still rendered in. However, as you can see, this castle here is going to be, well, costing us 0 ducats of maintenance? Interesting. Oh, of course, fort maintenance is tied to the... That's a bit weird. No, I'm looking at navy maintenance. Huh. No, fort maintenance is tied to the fort level, so actually, the forts are still free. But I do believe they might still provide zone of control, I'm not too sure. But either way, this is a level 0 fort, so can be sieged instantly, same on a capital, even though it is a level 2 fort and also has a capital fort, it doesn't. This capital does not give me an extra fort level, it just shows up on the game as such. So if we destroy the castle here, as you can see, there isn't actually the level 1 fort icon from capital as well. Currently have no forts. Actually, I've technically changed the single player run right now because I've deleted the fort on England. Oops. You know what, England? Just for you, I'll restart the construction of this fort. There we go. Right. And the other side effect, of course, of this is that because these forts will still exist, like the Montgomery Fort, in the 100 Years' War against France, England will still not like to give you any land in mainland England in the peace deal because they wouldn't occupy any forts on the mainland. So even though the forts are an instant siege, they still do require quote-unquote conventional occupations for peace deals. Right, I think that's about it for disclaimers. Again, I'm pretty sure there aren't any other source of fort levels that's easily accessible. Maybe the main mission, but that should be about it. I don't think Theodoran forts, or the Theodosian walls, sorry, give a fort level, unlike EU5, where they do give a fort level, so this should still be fine. But yeah, right, think. Not much more to say here. Let's pop into observer mode and see what the world would look like. Now, indeed, I did test this just very briefly to see if it does unpause, and yep, we're not going to have any issues unpausing and seeing the world go. So far, so good on that front, and let's see some opening wars. One of the first ones I want to be most interested in is, of course, going to be the France-England war, because I think that's going to be a bit of a faster rushdown for these forts, or lack of forts, on the mainland continent. But otherwise, I don't think it's going to change that much, to be honest. And, I mean, it's more of a long-term thing, but actually I'm curious quite a lot about how different the game's going to play out. And hey, if you're all really interested in how this will play out, I could also do a campaign within this mod, just where I also play, knowing there's no forts and building the way around that, because I think artillery is going to be significantly less useful now, especially since, again, there's no real sieges. So, could be an interesting campaign. I'll see how much you guys are interested in such a topic. But yeah, that's about that. Let's also, I guess, wag the speed up a bit. And let's wait for the 100 Years' Wars. Hopefully England actually decides to fight instead of just going back main. Alright, and the war has kicked off. Alright, and yep, instant occupations. Beautiful. Kind of missed it, to be honest, but yeah, Calais fallen. There we go. Calais, instant siege. Yep. Beautiful. If you're a France enjoyer, this must be very happy for you. It's like the 100 Years' War kicks off and it's over in 3 seconds. That said, they're probably going to stare at each other for a while, and I don't think there's a universe where the French get a landing off, but we'll see. Yeah, the French Navy's not doing too well. Ah, not a good day to be Scottish. Yeah, without the forts, the English can just kind of waltz on in there. Oh, although London has fallen to the Scottish as well. Okay. Bit temporarily, but yeah, that is one of the consequences. Interesting. Retreats are very trivial to some extent, dare I even say. Yeah, Scotland's not going to last long. They kind of do need fortifications. I guess wars are just over a lot quicker. That's an immediate realization. Ah, Timurids might be falling apart already as well. Yeah, they do that sometimes, don't they? Yeah, rebels are going to be a lot more miserable, I've just realized, because actually that's another side effect of removing forts, is just how miserable they make rebels. Maybe forts are a good thing, because if I'm blobbing, this is going to make rebels awful. Oh god. Maybe forts are good. Are forts good? No, forts bad. Maybe forts good. Oh, Bengal is not having a good time. Okay, Bengal needs forts. I'll bear that in mind. Yeah, that is a bad time for Bengal. Wow, okay. Actually, I think hordes will be doing quite well, relatively, because I think the faster wars should let them expand a bit faster, and they tend to do better the faster they expand. So maybe this is a very big closet buff for hordes, or frankly every nation. We'll see. Yeah, there goes Circassia. But yeah, 1450, England and France are still staring at each other, and Byzantium's still here because the Ottoman army is over there fighting Timur. Yeah, I think the Serbians are not going to last a while here, although... No, I don't think they're going to last a while here. They tend to have like 3 or 4 forts as well, so... Oh, okay. Actually didn't take that much from them. Fair enough. Ah, yeah, I don't think Mali is going to survive this. They get a pretty bad early disaster, a lot of rebels, and... Yeah, I think they kind of needed forts for this one. Yeah, they're not doing too well. Not doing too well at all. Alright, there's the peace deal. France didn't take anything too unusual. To be honest, this is relatively normal, although I guess Compiègne surviving is somewhat unusual. That said, though, the English are back in against the Scottish and have taken another slice. And, well, blink twice and you missed it. The Ottomans actually kind of partitioned the Byzantines with the Athenians and the Venetians here. The Venetians are doing great. They've grabbed into Kosovo, they've gone to Athens, they've got themselves established in Moria, yeah. But yeah, Byzantium did not survive. The lack of forts certainly did not help it. But alright, it's a bit of a different world at the moment. I say we've seen some developments already. Let's speed this up and let's pop back in the 1500s. So, here we are in the 1500s. And the world is a very different place. At first glance, I would even go so far as to say it's not been too unusual, but a little bit of digging reveals the impact of removing forts from EU4. A lot of wars that now take place a lot quicker. And what this actually means, and I've found in practice in places such as Dawasir over here, or even Adal, or even Kilwas consolidations in this area, is that smaller nations, like even Bunyoro over here, actually have the time to do some early scaling, win quickly against their neighbours, and start using that as a way to build up a power base, although this admittedly is not the best example. Also, Morocco's landed in Iberia, so that's something, although Castilla's also entered the Maghreb, so that's a bit not great for borders, I'll admit. But one of the other interesting side effects, for example, is the Teutonic Order actually had the Danzig Revolt occur, right? Danzig broke free, and I thought that was it for the Teutons. That's normally how they get annexed. But not only did the Teutons beat up Danzig, they also beat up Poland as well in that war, and actually ended up taking land from them, so that was a bit unusual to see. Indeed, if we zoom out further and actually look at the smaller nations like Shamshke over here, that doesn't tend to really survive, or even Baluchistan, that's been doing some expansion, and I mean, hey, Orissa's been having a great time in India over here. Well, I think the success of nations like Kikuchi, and to some extent even Oda, they never expand, right? Can be attributed to the fact that expansion is actually easier to do for the smaller nations. They can afford to go and conquer other places since sieging is now no longer really a factor. So yeah, I do think this is a bit healthier for the game. Nations like Chagatai can also go do well, and one of the other things that actually is impacted they don't really expect is of course rebels, and I think this has also been holding nations like the Ottomans or Mamluks back. It's so much more miserable for them to constantly go fight rebellions. This is also a factor that doesn't really affect smaller nations. Dawasir here may be doing quite well, and even still getting a similar amount of rebels, but because they're a more regional power, shall we say, they have a much easier time dealing with rebels than nations like the Mamluks, that if they get a rebellion here versus here, that's a bit of a further walking distance than it is for Dawasir if they just have their army in the middle. Although it's now more comparable, but you get the point, I hope. Simply put, if you're someone like Brittany, you have an easier time dealing with rebels than someone like France, because you have less country. I also think the AI has been expanding and scaling a little bit better because by removing fort maintenance, you just have more money to go around and actually use for your economy. So that's a bit of another boost towards economic development and general growth of nations. So that's good to see. But it does also mean that anytime there is a war, occupations are very, very quick. And while border gore like this will eventually be sorted because the Ottomans are going for round 2, at the moment it is certainly present. And yeah, the border gore situation, that's not improved by the lack of forts. Not much different in the New World for those 3 people wondering what the Aztecs are up to. Honestly, nothing too different. But while I do think the natives are a bit more active, it's honestly a bit hard to tell. I guess to be fair, it's 1500, there is literally no colonization. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a Castilian Caribbean, but yeah, it seems a bit slower than usual, but we shall see in a bit. But at the moment, you will be forgiven for saying, okay, it's still a normal game, just a bit more unusual. So let's jump forward another 100 years and see what happens. And we're back in the 1600s, and oh wow, the world has changed. So I think by this point, one of the bigger developments, shall we say, is of course, as nations got larger and kept expanding, they were able to keep a better hold on their rebels despite not having access to forts. This has meant that, in a similar fashion to very hard playthroughs, I found that the AI is actually a bit more aggressive and has achieved a lot more. So nations like Bohemia, especially the Ottomans, and even to some extent places like Spain, France expansion to here has done very, very well for themselves. This is extra evident for a nation such as Adal, even Big Beja, and of course Davosir, which still controls a pretty reasonable amount of land despite all the invasions from Adal and the Ottomans. Songhai has also had an excellent game, as has Kataria and Kilwa, and I think this also boils down to the fact that smaller nations could really utilize both the extra boost from not having to pay for their own forts, as well as not needing to pay for troops to siege any forts to get that early expansion done, which means that they've kind of become middling powers. Now, India, of course, is still dominated by Vijayanagara, that's fair enough, but Jaunpur has done a bit of a migration, and Mewar has done quite well as well, so that's nice to see. And hey, Big Lang Zhang, that's not pretty common, dare I say. China did unfortunately collapse the rebels, however, massive shout out to Lian. Never really see them about cool flag. I don't know what that Chinese symbol means, but hopefully that means something interesting. And we also have Qi on the board, which is unusual, but I guess it's half of the Qing, so I guess now we have to find the NQ. Nevertheless, also, Big Chagatai. Coming back to Europe, we do have Big Bohemia that not only went Protestant, but they also enforced a Protestant Europe, so Protestant dominant faith Europe, that's, I won't say too uncommon, but still not the most common. And the European consolidations are honestly pretty normal. Like, I'd say Tuscany is leisurely getting towards Italy, but again, I won't say it's too excessive. Big Riga, though, that's neat. Although they also have taken 5 provinces, meaning they no longer get buffs from their... Oh, no, they do. They do still get buffs. Riga's taken the optimal amount of land. Good job, Riga. In the New World, though, yeah, the lack or addition of forts was not enough for South America. Although, hey, British Columbia exists. And the Maya did actually survive somewhat well inside the area here, although, yeah, I think they're not going to survive the entire campaign. Also, Vinland. That being said, though, for the world as a whole, well, sure, we got to see more regional powers emerge and smaller nations like Qatari especially actually pop into existence and do things, which was neat. But I think by the 1600s now, we've seen the increased economic bonus from not having to pay for forts, combined with the expansion and, frankly, the AI scaling, to the extent that we now kind of just have a normal game of EU4. It seems a bit more very hardy in the sense that the AI is certainly expanding more, and I think the fact that wars are just fundamentally cheaper to fight from the lack of forts does help this expansion in a way without actually giving the AI direct buffs. But this also can boil down to the fact that, of course, not making the AI pay for forts is a direct buff, and making the AI not have to siege itself, aka other AIs, is also a direct buff to its expansion. That's kind of what we saw here. But I think the main takeaway is that EU4 is actually surprisingly quite playable without forts. Although now I have to concede that if you give me this map, or give me the Ottomans in this situation, this would be absolutely miserable for any kind of warfare, because I wouldn't really be able to defend any border. I'd have to constantly be on the lookout for any naval invasions or any kind of, occupations, because what would happen is if I'm playing the Ottomans and I'm invading Chagatai right now, for example, which is what they're doing, and I go towards Bohemia or something, or even Chagatai, they could sneak in a random stack and start randomly sieging loads of provinces, which is why occupations in this entire playthrough have been very whack. You'd get the most random occupations, like in this war, Commonwealth versus Bohemia, what's going on, right? Like, why is Bohemia sieging this province of all places? Yes, they just can't do that. But yeah, certainly a very interesting thing to watch. But you know what? I think forts are good in moderation, so maybe let's not get rid of them. But with that all said, that is all the time I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to my channel members, especially Ark, Solem, Solemon, Lozendica, Nick Huss, Nanhatan, Star72, The Awesome Rabbit, Vespero Gaming, Grandmill Flavia, Lebarule, W Haste, Sov, Anthony35, AC Napa, Conspiracy Pizza, Yukata, Dan Ray, Marvy, Jack, Ryland, Stuart Allen, Andrew Black, Nebula, Zontronic, and Twiner.